Hi, mystery writers. It's Zara Altair with Write a Killer Mystery. And today I want to talk about creating a voice in your novel that is memorable for your readers and gets them engaged. First, I want to thank my patrons on Patreon for their continued support of this video series and my mystery writing. And if you would like to join us, there's a link in the description below. Okay, so what can you do as a writer to really craft a distinctive voice in your novel? So let's look at 5 different ways you can do that today. There are many more, but we'll just focus on 5 today. Because you want your story to stand out, and there's always room for a fresh voice in mysteries. So bringing your own unique voice to the world of whodunits is no elementary task. You really need to work on creating your voice. We're going to look at how you can create a singular voice in your mystery that will have your readers on the edge of their seat, really engaged with what you have to say. Let's look at what the power of the voice does for your story. In the intricacies of crafting a mystery, it's really an art and a science, and I've talked about that before. And at the heart of every vibrant whodunit lies an equally riveting storytelling voice. That's what you're aiming for, the voice that's telling the story. And this distinctive voice transforms your story from a simple series of events into an immersive and engaging story for readers and guides them through the labyrinth of all the clues and the suspects and those complex emotions that your characters evoke. Let's look at some reasons why that strong voice is important in your story. First, you create a captivating atmosphere. The voice of the story really sets a tone and an atmosphere for your story. It helps to create an immersive atmosphere, ensuring that readers become fully invested in your world. And also, it creates memorable characters. Compelling and multi-layered characters are the beating heart of any good mystery, and a well-defined narrative voice allows you to endow each personality with their own distinctive traits and quirks and foibles and makes them unforgettable. So it's the way you tell the story, all right? And also that voice creates emotional depth in your story. So they aren't just about sleuths and suspects. I mean, they are, but that's not all they're about. And you need much, much more to keep your readers engaged and captivate them and keep them engrossed in your story. Because what you're doing is exploring the human experience and delving them into those feelings like loss and betrayal and deception. And the narrative voice is what carries your reader and grips them and helps them feel those emotions for themselves. That narrative voice creates a sense of emotional authenticity, and that's what resonates with your readers and forms that crucial connection that you want with your readers. And I think most importantly, narrative voice really creates that distinctiveness, the identity of the story. When readers think about your story, they think about that narrative voice that carried them through the whole story and how it felt to hear that voice, as it were. So it's the combination of your storytelling style, your point of view, and that careful manipulation of pacing and those genre tropes that we need to include in our mysteries that leave that lasting impression. I think more than anything else, the voice is what leaves that lasting impression. Okay. So let's look at some ways that you can use that narrative voice to enhance your story. One way is by incorporating an authentic atmosphere. That's the feeling, the mood of the story. It's that elusive X factor that sets your mystery apart from um, others, and it's that art of evocative storytelling. You want to evoke feelings and emotions in your readers. It's crucial to hone your narrative style in a way that transports your readers into the heart of your mystery world, and with every word and sentence and paragraph, you want to strive to immerse them in the atmosphere and the emotion of the story, as well as just the facts of the plot, as it were. And one way to do this is by painting vivid images through descriptive language and scene setting, building a world your reader feels is tangible and alive and tinged with the delicious allure of mystery, as it were. All right, so challenge yourself to reach beyond cliches and overused expressions and really set that distinctive, unique voice that you have for telling your story. You really want distinctive cadences and rhythms in that narrative voice, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit more in just a minute, because crafting a narrative style that evokes the essence of your story's world is the crux of engaging your readers and making that story memorable by immersing your reader in the atmosphere and the feelings of the story. And then narrative voice also breathes life into your characters through distinct dialogue, especially if one of your characters is a narrator. So if you're using first person, that character style, their voice is the voice of your story. Um, it's not just about descriptive language. It's on that captivating the voice of your characters and creating that unforgettable characters with the language that those characters use, and also the language that you use, your narrative voice, to describe and evoke emotions about those characters in your story. And once again, this goes through giving each character distinctive syntax and distinctive slang or turns of phrase that they use that no other character in that story uses. So the rhythm of their speech comes across, so you don't need a lot of dialogue tags because it's very clear who's talking. So by weaving a collection of striking character voices, you'll enhance the personalities of each character within the story. And then you want to explore unique points of view. So this is especially true if you have more than one narrator in your story. And it's stepping away from conventional first person or third person perspective can add depth. So if you alternate characters, um, um, you switch between differing characters and their perspective of the story, but also it's not just their perspective, but it's the language that they use and the emotion that those alternating characters evoke, because they're going to speak in different ways and feel differently about the actions that are going on in the story. This technique not only adds variety to your story and your narrative voice, but allows you to showcase a range of clues and red herrings and suspects, uh, and you're presenting those viewpoints of various characters. You include or exclude certain details. So each character has that point of view, and you can bring it across with the narrative voice that you use. So consider experimenting with narrative styles so that you're bringing that voice to the fore depending on which character is speaking, as it were, which character is telling the story. Um, and then I just wanted to mention as a little tip, you'll make your mystery even more engaging. Each narrative character has that distinct voice, has that distinct syntax, that unique vocabulary, so that you can instantly recognize who the narrator is. So maybe you're alternating chapters. For instance, I just read a book this last week that had chapters that were told from a different character's point of view, but the voice was the same for each character. So a couple of times I found myself going back to the beginning of the chapter to double check, like, which character is it that's telling this chapter right now? So you want to make that character voice really distinctive for each character that's narrating in your story. And I am currently reading Christopher Brockmeyer's Black Widow, and wow, does he nail it with character voices. He has several character voices in the story, and they alternate and they give a different perspective, which is all what you want to do with alternating character narration. But also, each character has a very different style of speaking, as it were. So it's totally clear wherever you are reading that that is the character that's speaking, and that's the level you want to choose. Once again, that's Christopher Brockmeyer's Black Widow. So if you're thinking about how to do this or want to learn more about how an author does that, I suggest Black Widow is a good example to read of how you can alternate that character narrative voice, not just the character telling the story, but the actual narrative voice that comes through for each character. Okay, so you can balance tension and resolution with your narrative voice as well. And so it's a critical aspect of developing a strong storytelling voice, is that balance between, the tension, what's going to happen next, and the resolutions, like a section where the detective reviews what they know so far, keeping it interesting all at the same time. So this is careful pacing of your story, and picking the narrative style that you use to describe and depict those alternating sequences. So play with tempo and timing and how you use your narrative voice, because narrative voice is the big picture. It's the way the story is told, and you want it to become clear and focus so your readers really engage with that narrative voice, and engage in your mystery and feel what that narrative voice, you, the author, wants them to feel at any given moment in time in your story. All right. It takes a lot of practice to do this, so just keep practicing, and I do recommend reading different books, watching and looking and examining how other authors use narrative voice in their stories to create that engaging, reader engaging atmosphere that you want in your story. It isn't just the facts, ma'am. It's really engaging them with the emotions, and the emotions come from the way that you phrase your sentences and the vocabulary that you use and the pacing that you use within your sentence structure and paragraph structure. So, a lot to think about when you're thinking about narrative voice, but you do want it to come through clearly, so it's recognizable. And I think if you think about some of the mystery writers that you've read, you're going to understand how narrative voice can be so different. So your goal is to achieve your recognizable voice that readers understand and get, so that with every novel that you write, they know that this is your novel because the voice is clear and they like that voice. That's part of what creates a reader following, is the narrative voice. They like listening, as it were, to the way your story is told. Okay, I hope that helps. It's a lot to think about in narrative voice, so I bring it up a lot because there's so many aspects to it. And also, I wanted to thank Audible for being a sponsor for Write a Killer Mystery. And right now, at this moment, I am listening to Black Widow on Audible, and there's even more of that distinctive narrative voice, because the narrator brings out the voice of each of the characters that narrates the different parts of the story. And there's actually three narrators in this story, so it's a masterful use of differing narrative voices to construct the whole story. Also, if you haven't tried Audible before, there's a link in the description for a 30-day free trial. And I think as a mystery writer, you're going to enjoy listening to how stories are told. All right, thank you very much for being here. I'll see you next week. Keep writing.